Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton, but where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and low prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as Who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
This is Rob Long with Martini Shot for The Ankler. Years ago, I had lunch with a studio executive who had left his job. That's what the story was anyway, though it was less about leaving and more about being asked to leave, I think. Less ankle, more axe, to put it in terms that fans of The Ankler will understand. The good news for most of these executives is, they still paid you. You shifted effortlessly into a production deal and life kind of went on. If not as usual, then at least as well as can be expected. I mean, you'd have meetings and drive around and eat lunch and try to get a project going and probably spend a little too much time wondering if this or that executive at this or that studio or network is going to last, and if maybe they'll call you back into the executive ranks where the studio gates all rise as you approach and you can always get a good table at lunch. But for the time being, then and now, you're sort of in the wilderness. You're just a person driving around town, showing your ID to the guard. Now, I start a lot of these martini shots with what we call a handle. I'll say something like, I had lunch with a friend a few weeks ago, or once, not long ago, and then I'll launch into a story that occurred either a week ago or, maybe 20 years ago. And often I can't remember myself, but this one happened a long time ago, and here's how you know. Thank God the executive told me over lunch that I had my assistant print out all of my contacts and update them. Because, when you're fired or axed, or even if you ankle unexpectedly, you often lose access to the trappings you need to stay in the game. And he added, and this is how you know my story is an old one, I wish we still had a Rolodex. Because it's hard, he said, to contact people. Now, I'm aware that there are some young people listening to this right now for whom the word Rolodex is a baffling mystery. A Rolodex, young friends, was a physical thing. It was a card file on a metal ring on which your assistant kept every important someone's name and address up to date somehow. Now, when agents would sneak out of their old agencies to start working at a new place, they first had to figure out how to steal the Rolodex, because you can't poach clients if you don't know where to call them. You needed paper, because once you leave the office for the last time, they shut off your Outlook. Now, I thought of this recently when I got an email from a newly independent producer, which is a euphemism, as I know you'll understand from the layoff news coming out of every studio and network these days, who was an executive I've worked with before and who I like a lot. And of course, would love to work with again, and who is now, he's producing instead of executive-ing, or whatever you call it. And he now wants everyone to know how to connect at the new email and the new quote, office, which I suspect is got a washer dryer in there too. But anyway, what the producer did was what you do. You send out a new contact info email to the people on the list. And I like to think that it was a carefully curated list of just the very top people because, I was on it. But I suspect it was a pretty widely aimed shotgun blast with no real editing because I was on it. But I noticed that the assistant, and yes, it was from an assistant, had probably gotten the new email slightly wrong. There was a missing letter where I was pretty sure a letter should be, and because I was procrastinating, I made a note of the time, because I was interested to see how long it would take for the following things to happen. The producer would see the email and instantly notice the typo, freak out, because, of course, you can't have that, and the producer would impress upon the assistant just how serious this was. The producer would fall into a panic, imagining all of the pieces of business and projects that were never going to find their way to the new company. There would be some yelling, maybe some of it not strictly businesslike, and the assistant would simply resend the email with a note and the corrected address, and it took 3 minutes. Maybe less, I was distracted by Instagram or something, but 3 minutes. Nothing, really, but enough time to reflect fondly on the Rolodex and to think a bit on the question of the day, which is, look, we all know that the ranks everywhere in show business are getting thinner. So the question is, if that is the case, what is everybody going to do? And the good news is, everyone does everything on their phones anyway, so no one is going to drop off the face of the business. But the bad news is, these days, when you're gone, you're gone. Cushy production deals, an assistant for a year, that's all pretty much over. Gone like the Rolodex and an office on the lot. What is to become of all of those people? What is to become of us? Well, let me tell you a story. Everybody in show business has experienced this moment. Someone you work with or once worked with will ask you a very specific kind of favor. Would you please take a meeting with, and then they name someone they owe a favor to, someone that's been nagging them for a meeting, and the request is always, can you just sit down with this person and hear their idea for a great show? And you always say yes. Because, what if it's a great idea? And also because we will all be in one of those 3 roles at some point in our respective careers. The asker, the askee, and the person who needs that meeting to climb back into the business. I mean, it's never really a great idea, but you take the meeting anyway. So I took the meeting anyway. And the guy I was meeting with had done a show in some capacity at some point, had been an executive for, a year or so. But he was one of those guys, and they were all guys back then, who the other guys in the suits liked because he was fun to be around and normal and not weird and awkward and angry like, writers. Because he wasn't a writer. He was just the popular guy. And at this point in show business, there are lots and lots of them. And they're not all guys anymore either, but they are all sort of in trouble when the next 12 months of consolidations and cost-cutting measures start to get serious. Now, here was his idea, and you can use the same archaeological insight to figure out the basic date for the story, somewhere before 2010, before Uber became Uber. But it's not really the idea that mattered. We met at a coffee shop in Santa Monica, and there was some small talk, some mutual flattery, which is always nice. And then we agreed that TV was terrible these days, and nobody knows what they're doing. See, things don't really change. And then he said, do you know what a gypsy cab is? And in fact, I did. A gypsy cab way back then was a guy just driving a car, any car around New York City. And he would stop and pick people up and drive them someplace for a negotiated fee without a taxi license, basically illegally, and totally unaffiliated with any taxi or limousine company. He was a free agent. So the show is, the guy said, about these guys, the guys who drive gypsy cabs. And it takes place in the depot where they all hang out. I mean, they're always there, just sharing stories and complaining and struggling to get by. So it's like the show Taxi, I said. No, he said, no, because that was like a taxi company. But these guys are gypsy cabs. They're totally independent. No taxi company involved. I couldn't stop myself. But if there's no cab company, I said, then why is there a depot? I mean, the depot is where the cab company keeps their cabs. Well, he said, maybe they are affiliated in some way with a company. Well, then it is Taxi, I said. Which, actually wouldn't be that bad. I mean, Taxi was a great show. They're going to reboot Small Wonder. They probably should do Taxi 2. I mean, look, I don't know that they're going to reboot Small Wonder, and now I'm terrified that I may have given somebody a very terrible idea. But the point is, the gypsy cab idea was terrible, and the person who asked me to sit down for a meeting knew it was terrible, and I think maybe even the popular guy who pitched it knew it was terrible. But the trick is, if you're one of the many people in show business who don't really have a specific, guild-type job, if you're just a popular guy, in other words, when the axe axes or the ankle ankles, you have to keep moving. You just have to keep meeting. You have to keep hustling. You have to update your contacts and read every magazine and try to make yourself indispensable to a process that's getting leaner and meaner all the time. You have to reduce the money outflow on a personal level and build up the reserves and call up everyone and meet every day, all day, and get a piece of real estate on the big board, a chip, a piece of Bentner Avenue, it doesn't matter. If you don't have an office anymore, and you can't sit in your back shed and sulk and write a script like a writer or make a little short film with you as a star like an actor or any of the other things people in show business do, the people who never ever had any job security to lose in the first place, you just have to be that guy, that popular guy, and sit down with everyone, even me. And I promise I wasn't among the first 20 people he met after getting turfed out. I mean, I may not have even been among the first 20 people he met with that day. But the story ends not with his departure from show business or that Taxi reboot that never happened, but I don't know, another project. I can't remember what, but that project led to another project that led to a popular streaming series and a whole lot of money. And all because even though he was, just a popular guy with limited to zero applicable skills, he hustled. He had no ego, as Coffee with Me proves, and show business actually needs those guys, needs them more than every single executive in every single office across town. If you wake up over the next few months and find yourself driving out of your office for the last time, call me up. Tell me your dumb idea, and you'll be back on top in no time. And that's it for this week. Next week, is it too early to stop working until next month? For The Ankler, this is Rob Long with Martini Shot.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.